Picture this. It's the 1800s, and Canada isn't quite the country we know today. People are figuring out where to live, how to work together, and what kind of nation they want to build. It's a time of excitement, but also plenty of challenges. Let's dive into some of the big moments that helped shape Canada and the people who lived through them. Let's kick things off with Confederation in 1867. Imagine a team of provinces deciding to join forces. Like superheroes teaming up to create something stronger together. Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia became the first provinces to unite into the Dominion of Canada. Why? Partly because they wanted to keep their land safe from the United States, and partly because working together could help their economies. It was a big deal for settlers who saw this as a step toward independence. But for Indigenous communities, it wasn't a celebration. They weren't invited to the negotiations, and the new government's policies often ignored their rights and land. Now, let's move west to the Red River Resistance of 1869 to 1870. Imagine this. The government wants to take over your neighborhood, but they haven't even asked your opinion. That's what happened to the Métis people in the Red River Settlement, modern-day Winnipeg. Led by Louis Riel, the Métis stood their ground to protect their culture and land. This led to the creation of Manitoba as a province, a big win for the Métis. But the tension between them and the government didn't go away, and would come back with a vengeance in the Northwest Resistance. Speaking of keeping order, Canada created the Northwest Mounted Police in 1873. These officers were like Canada's version of the Wild West sheriffs, sent to enforce laws and help settlers in the vast Northwest. But while they're often portrayed as heroes, they enforced policies that hurt Indigenous and Métis communities, making their role a lot more complicated than it seems. Then there's the Canadian Pacific Railway. Completed in 1885, this railway was like the internet of its time, connecting the country from east to west. It made travel and trade much easier and encouraged settlers to move west. But building it was no easy task. Thousands of Chinese workers were brought in to do dangerous, underpaid work. They faced terrible conditions and racism. And when the railway was done, they were hit with a head tax that made it harder to build a life in Canada. For Indigenous peoples, the railway brought waves of settlers that pushed them off their lands. Finally, let's talk about the Northwest Resistance of 1885. This was Louis Riel's second big stand. The Métis and First Nation communities in the prairies were struggling. The buffalo were gone, their land was disappearing, and the government wasn't listening. They resisted, but the government's army defeated them. Riel was executed, and for many, he became a symbol of the fight for justice. For Indigenous and Métis peoples, the loss marked an even tougher road ahead. These events weren't just historical milestones. They were moments that shaped real lives, for better or worse. For settlers, they brought new opportunities. For Indigenous and Métis communities, they often meant loss and struggle. But they also showed incredible resilience and the fight for rights that continues to this day.